Out with the old and in with the new. The Pokemon TCG has had a revolving door of favorites throughout the years. However, the designers definitely pick their favorites that get good cards over and over again. You've probably noticed how half of the decks in the game focus around Garbodor or cats, no matter where you go. Some favorites, however, get abandoned by the designers, and that's what this video is about. Pokemon's forgotten favorites. Now, to qualify as a forgotten favorite, it has to be a favorite in the first place, so I try to avoid the generational bias of new toy syndrome by having Pokemon that have cards across multiple generations that have been good in competitive play. Also, they have to be good, not fringe good, but good. Also, to qualify as a forgotten favorite, they have to have not had a great card since Sun and Moon. So I'm not going to be counting cards that were playable into Sword and Shield. So Pokemon like Dusknoir, that's last playable card, was the Dusknoir tag team that saw play in the middle of Sword and Shield. We're not counting that. Moving on to our actual list of forgotten favorites, the one that immediately comes to mind is Garbodor. So Garbodor, second printing ever, is one of the best cards ever. Garbotoxin ability, if you attach tool card to it, each player's Pokemon in play, hand, and discard pile have no abilities. Yes, the discard pile and hand were both relevant interactions for abilities at this time. In expanded and standard, this card absolutely broken. So many decks. Lando Garb was really good. There was that one Flareon deck, the top 16 worlds used it. There was Darkrai Garbodor, which was really good. Sableye Garbodor, Control used even Garbodor because you can just shut your opponent down when you reuse the disruptive cards. Moving forward, we had Yveltal Garbodor in 2014. That was really good. Again, Lando Garb was still really good at that time. And moving on, Garbodor kind of fell off in 2015. You don't really see him that much. I think the game was just a little too fast, honestly, at this time. So, he kind of fell off. And then he rotated. However, Pokemon decided Garbodor's really cool. So, and he got a second printing with that extended his legality until 2015, if you're wondering, because this was 2012. But then he got reprinted. Different attacks, so technically a different Pokemon. However, Garbotoxin is back, baby. No abilities, from the hand, from the play, from the discard pile. Really good. Probably even better in this printing than its original printing. Immediately was seeing play once the 2016 format was over. Even in 2016, I guess, it was still super fast. Night March 180 turn 1, Vespiquen 150 turn 1, usually. And Greninja Break just there. Scary. If they set up, they win. Lugia V-Star-esque deck. Hate it. But Garbotoxin was back in full swing once the post-rotation happened. Darkrai Garbodor was pretty good. Darkrai Giratina Garbodor was usually the combo that you used. And mainly the return of Yveltal Garbodor. Same two cards pretty much slapped together, but a couple more pieces added to the deck in 2016 that made it really good. Almost tier 0 level good in the 2016 Primal Class Evolutions format. We saw Mega Mewtwo Garbodor as well, one of my least favorite decks of all time. I love Garbodor, but I hate Mega Mewtwo. Essentially, for anyone who's wondering what Mega Mewtwo does, it'll probably pop up on the screen right now. Mega Mewtwo used a stadium to copy the attack of base Mewtwo. So it either one-shot you with Mega Mewtwo's attack, or if you did not one-shot it, you lose the game. I'm not even kidding when I say that if you do not one-shot Mega Mewtwo with your attack, you have lost the game. You cannot 2-hit KO it. You cannot 3-hit KO it. It uses damage swap, and it will swap all damage on both active Pokemon. Essentially saying that if you do not want to KO me, I'm going to find something on your field that's undamaged and move all of my damage to it. Because if there's no damage on your guy that they hit with it, they just essentially heal all damage while doing it to you. This is like a GX level attack, like a once per game V-Star power level attack. And it's just all you have to do is just have the stadium in play. Ridiculous. Not sure what they were doing there. XY was kind of a mistake in terms of block design in general. And then going into 2017, still really good. Turned off, Vileplume decks, which are really taking off around the Sun and Moon format because of Decidueye. But it got way more relevance because it got its best friend, Trashalanche Garbodor, in 2017 Primal Clash to Guardians Rising format. And essentially this formed one of the best duos in the history of the Pokemon TCG. 2-in-1 line, really good, up there with Gardevoir Gallade for its dominance of a single evolution line power. And it was all for the Trashalanche deck. Yes, the second attack is also good. But Trashalanche, 20 for each item in your opponent's discard pile. And items are just taking over the game at the time. I told you that 2016 Worlds was like, turn 180 style decks. And while it did kind of change with post-rotation, the items didn't really go away, just the Pokemon that hit that amount of damage. People were still playing like 30 copies of items in their deck, which was really a problem for game design, made it really unfun. You were watching your opponent move for the whole turn, and then you're just like, oh, I hope my N, Iono type card bricks them so they can't play the game. So really bad, and there was no way to remove the Garbodor's tool at that time until Guardians Rising. So they printed a tool removal, which is an item, so they balanced Garbodor a bit. However, they made Garbodor so broken with this, and they were both legal. Both Garbotoxin, Ability Lock, and this were legal. And the catch is that if you want to remove the Garbotoxin Ability Lock, you have to play an item. So you play an item to remove the Ability Lock. Now you powered up Trashalanche. A lot of time decks were running Sycamore, which is the same as Professor's Research. Discard your hand, draw 7. So if you need to discard your hand, you gotta be like, well, can I afford to discard my hand? Is there too many items here that I'm getting rid of? Can I afford to play these Ultra Balls, stupidly just spending them like you were previously, and just don't care about the consequences? Go down to 1 card in deck on turn 1. Who cares? I can just super rod to make sure I don't deck out, Garbodor really changed that. Really good in 2017. Primal Clash Guardians Rising immediately paired with Drampa GX as just a big colorless attacker. Also Tauros GX saw play as the same thing, just a big colorless attacker. We also saw Garbodor boxes appearing by the 2017 Worlds, where it also got its new best friend Golisopod, which was really, really good. Golisopod Garbodor, just a really, really good deck in that format. And then one set after Worlds, it would get its even better partner, Zoroark. I don't think Zoroark Garbodor was like the immediate pair. I think Zoropod was kind of like the first big Zoroark deck, if I remember from that time, because it countered Buzzrock around that time as well. But eventually Zoroark Garbodor, really good deck, would go on to win 2018 Worlds. So second place 2017 Worlds, first place 2018 Worlds. We even saw a BGS takeoff with this Garbodor, Buzzgarb Shrine. So you'd play a basic Baby Buzzwole, which was just a big fighting swinger to take on Zoroark and just apply good damage. And you would have Garbodor just to punish items and lock ability. So just this really big spread single prize, 2-shot deck that in the late game would start threatening the 1-shots with Trashalanche, or the 1 turn where your Buzzwole swung for a lot of damage as well. Just a really scary deck. We did see Garbodor rotate, unfortunately, later on in 2019, after 2018, sorry, we saw the Garbotoxin rotate, so it kind of fell off. BGS still exists in Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder. It's just less oppressive, less of a tier 1 deck, because it does have some good things now. It plays Weavile in the Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder format to kind of have that 1-shot potential, since items are a little less catch-all. I can just rely on this 1-shotting in the late game, though still it's good. You're still playing it, of course. We did kind of see Garbodor fall off, though, with Team Up. Doing Trashalanche is nice and all, but Pikarom doesn't really care. It's just going to play 10 items on turn 1 and take 2 prizes, or take a prize on turn 1 with Full Blitz, and then take 2 knockouts on turn 2 with its GX attack. You might as well just play something that wins the game turn 1 instead of winning the game on turn 5. Tag Team's really bad designed, obviously. Bad for the game. And then 2019 Worlds rotated out the first 4 Sun and Moon sets. We lost Garbodor. But even in Expanded, Garbodor has just been incredible. Just to mention some archetypes that have appeared since the standard rotation, because a lot of the Expanded archetypes were very similar, adaptations of standard decks at the time. We saw Zoroark Garbodor with Seismitoad at the time, and Seismitoad item locks your opponent. We also saw Seismitoad Garbodor and Expanded, just similar archetypes to what was going on in Standard, honestly. But Garbodor would really take on later in Expanded. Even in Sword and Shield, obviously, I don't count Expanded decks seeing play in Sword and Shield because, technically, they're far past their rotation. But, Dragapult Garbodor is a tier 1 deck for a while. We then saw the Garbodor being paired with Regidrago, even nowadays, because Regidrago has the ability to take an extra turn every single game, because Double Dragon Energy is a stupid card and that shouldn't be legal. But essentially, they just always take an extra turn, so they can play down a Trubbish at any point, take that extra turn, and then Garbodor get in play the next turn that they get for free. So, but then there's just this huge fall off. Just after this, Yes, this Poisonous Puddle Garbodor saw some play. Like, come on, man, just stop lying to yourself. That card was bad. I tried to play this Garbodor. Because I love Garbodor. But these are clearly downgrades. Like, my God, what happened to Garbodor? This is such a terrible card. Cute artworks on all these, though. I love Garbodor. But yeah, the Trash Man really did take out the trash. Just absolutely super, super good card. Not even mentioning the fact that a Trubbish was playable separate from any of these Garbodors. There was a playable Trubbish with the Tool Drop attack. Crazy, crazy guy. One of the best cards ever printed. 3 of the best cards, sorry, ever printed, because there's 2 Garbotoxins and Trash Avalanche, and just complete fall off from there. That's exactly what this video is really about, though. For our next pick, we have Flygon. Now, Flygon has a ton of good cards, but again, that same fall off over time. Really, really big generational bias. But even still, seeing play after that. This Flygon actually is like kind of okay. I've seen people play it in 04, but they say it's bad. But really, the first good Flygons were like this Flygon, which would see play in 2007 Worlds. I think it took 2nd and 3rd place at 2007 Worlds, if I remember correctly. No, I don't think. I think 3rd place was Infernape, or Empoleon. Sorry, Empoleon Infernape was the deck. But I know it took 2nd place. It was like the big deck out of Denmark at the time. Was the Flygon Nidoqueen Magcargo deck, which played this Flygon as an attacker. And this Flygon, I don't know too much about the 2007 meta, but it just hits for a lot of damage with Reactive Blast, because when you play it from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, search your disc pile for 2 energies and attach them. And you can accelerate 2 React energies, and now you're doing 100 damage for, just a guy you threw down and throw 1 Lightning energy on. And Dragon Claw could be paid for at the time because of Boost Energy, which pays 3 colorless, but then discards stuff at the end of the turn. So you can even just accelerate like Lightning Grass and then attach a Boost Energy for turn you're swinging for 100. So it's just a really big swinger with 2 resistances as well. Really good guy. Then we saw the Delta Supply Flygon. Now, this was used in a lot of different Delta decks, but really just paired well with other Flygons, honestly. Also really a nice art on this guy. Just accelerates a basic or Delta Rainbow from your card to one of your Pokemon with Delta on it, so all the Delta species Pokemon. Mainly the other Flygon was the main target. The Delta Flygon we'll talk about in a minute. This could also attack itself, but the main reason that this energy acceleration was really helpful was because of Cast Form, which was one of those Holon's energy Pokemon where you can attach the Pokemon as an energy, but then when you play it, you have to bounce an energy back. So what you do is attach with Flygon first, so attach a basic energy with Flygon, then use Cast Form, which accelerates the basic energy back, and now you have 2 Vinny Rainbow energy on. And you can even, if you have a second Flygon, accelerate that energy back, and now you have 3 energy on the Pokemon. So this guy was just really good, especially when paired with this Flygon right here. Sand damage, as long as Flygon's your active Pokemon, put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's benched basic Pokemon between turns. So you can accelerate this attack, which seems really hard to pay. You can just have the other Flygon pay it really easily with Cast Form and just extra energies. So you're spreading damage with sand damage, and then you're using Psychic Pulse, which is 80 and 10 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon with any damage counters on it. So this played with the Flyvies deck in 2007 Worlds, where you would damage all your opponent's Pokemon with Jolteon, which just spread 10 to everything, and then just start racking up tons of damage, and then later on, your Absolutely X also has an attack that spreads damage, and it has an ability that can move the damage around, so just making use of the extra damage you put on board. And this is at a time where things have like 100 to 120 HP a lot of times, besides the EXs, so like, it's pretty solid doing that much damage and spreading. After like 5 attacks, you're gonna just, and I know 5 attacks sound unthinkable in today's standard where games end in 3 attacks, but you're gonna start winning really quickly. We also saw this very interesting Flygon. I don't know if people play this, but I think it's really interesting, so I want to talk about it. With its Psychic Protector, if Flygon is damaged by an opponent's attack, you may discard up to 4 cards from your hand. If you do, any damage done to Flygon is reduced by 10 for each card you discard, which is just really fascinating. I don't know if it reduces by 10 before or after weakness kind of thing, but you can actually just negate 4 damage. I don't know if there's ever a good deck with this guy, but it's one of the coolest design cards. We really saw a lot of cards like this going in Diamond and Pearl, a lot of these reactive cards, which I enjoy. Speaking of Diamond and Pearl, we start off Flygon Golden Age again. We continue the Flygon Golden Age. This one really saw play in 2009 because of the other Flygon, but it was very good in its own right. Because it was just a needed piece of the deck. So as long as Flygon's your active Pokemon, put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's fighting or non-fighting active Pokemon. Remember, this is double rules wording. At the time, they were still wording cards, like there was double battles, but there really wasn't. So essentially, you just got to ping your opponent down. I've even played this in 2010 Worlds, which I know is kind of uncommon, but my Flygon Metagross deck plays it because with that extra damage chip and an expert belt, it one-shots anything in the Machamp deck. Because if you attach, you do the attack does 80. If you attach a fighting energy, the belt moves it up to 100, and then the fighting ping moves it up to 110. So you can KO Garchomps and you KO Luxray with weakness. So it's just really good. Obviously, in 09, also good against Luxray. Because you get fighting type weakness, which is also just a generally good weakness to hit in all of the Diamond and Pearl formats besides maybe 2007 or 2008, sorry. Then we move on to the really, really good Flygon for Diamond and Pearl, the Rising Rivals Flygon. Insane Pokebody. This card actually just does it all, honestly. If any basic energy touches your Flygon, it's the same type of your other Pokemon in play. Their treat cost of those is 0. So essentially, if I attach a grass energy to this Flygon, all my grass Pokemon get free treats. Really, really good. Sandwall discarded a Stadium in play, did 40 damage, and prevented all effects of attacks, including damage done to Flygon. And this is really good, but we have to talk about the level X to get why this is really good. And then just a really good Power Swing attack to 60 plus 10 for each evolved Pokemon on the bench. Usually Flygon decks had no problem getting like 4 or 5 evolved Pokemon in play as long as they're playing against something that doesn't have a Dusknoir. So this attack could swing really big. Even with a Dusknoir in play, you're hitting 90 for 3 colorless, which is just super efficient. Lightning resistance was also one of the best resistances to have at the time, because around the time that Rising Rivals was released, so did Luxray, which was one of the best lightning attackers. So having resistance to that, really good. Really bad weakness to Garchomp, which would come out one set later. However, Flygon's playable despite having the worst weakness, arguably. I'd say Psychic's worse of a weakness. The level X is just a real winner here. Wind Erosion, as long as Flygon's your active Pokemon, discard the top card of your opponent's deck between turns. Sometimes you can just RNG your opponent, mill like a really good recovery card, or the Pokemon they needed next turn and they can't get it now. I have won so many games of this. It also, in 2009, created the Stall Gun archetype that was purely based around just milling your opponent. And that's important. We're going to talk about a Trapinch. I'm just going to throw it on screen so you can see it. The Trapinch had an attack that locks your opponent active. It also had an attack that gusts your opponent up. So with the Memory Berry tool, which allowed you to copy attacks from the previous forms, you could just use this Trapinch attack to lock your opponent active and just deck them out. Really good. Arguably still even really good in 2010 because there's wide play of a Spiritomb, which has a colorless resistance, which means that Sand Tomb attack is doing 0 damage coming off of Flygon. So you're just going to mill your opponent while doing 0 damage. And the Spiritomb locks switch cards like Warp Point and Switch from being played, so you need a Warp Energy to move it because it locks item cards. Extreme Attack is just an extreme attack. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon level X, does 150. You can just snipe 150. This is a time where things like at max have like 160 HP. Without any modifiers, right? And you're just like, yeah, snipe 150. This is like a gatekeeper attack, honestly. There's a lot of decks that like can't see play in 2009 because they are reliant on level X's. Like Garbodor AMU would otherwise be a really good deck, but Flygon just farms the AMU level X's with its extreme attack. And again, free retreat, resistance, worse weakness, but still really, really good. And now it's relevant to talk about Sandwall we talked about before. When you get that free turn of Flygon immunity, that means you get 2 cards off the top of your opponent's deck with Wind Erosion. So sometimes if you just if you're in a really bad spot, you just come up with Flygon and mill 2 cards while getting rid of your opponent's Stadium. A lot of decks rely on Stadiums like Broken Time Space at the time, so you can get rid of a Stadium, just mill 2 cards. Really, really good. There's also in between healing with Nidoqueen, which we'll bring up real quick. Nidoqueen has the Maternal Comfort, which heals 10 in between turns from your Pokemon. So you can also just get some more healing with Flygon. A lot of Flygon decks like doing this. They just like buying time. Even if they're like not a stall variant of Flygon, sometimes they'll just gust you up and say, I'm going to get some free healing and some free mills while you struggle to get back into your attackers, which is just really, really good. So moving on to Black and White, we are past the Flygon Golden Age now, but still we had the really good Boundaries Crossed Flygon, which at any time between turns, if it's your active, put 1 damage counter on each of one's Pokemon. The attack is god-awful. I did attack with this thing before, but it was using like a Memory Berry to copy the, I forget what the Celebi EX, yeah, that's what did it. It allows you to copy the attacks in the basic form, and the Trapinch has an attack where it discards energy from your opponent's Pokemon, which is funny. So you can slow your opponent down while spreading. The main way this was played was with Dusknoir. In 2014, We saw Flygon Dusknoir, I think, take top 8 at one of the, it was USNAT maybe? It was one of the national championships. I don't remember exactly which, but essentially you just spread damage, and then Dusknoir had a power or ability that let you move the damage around your opponent's field. So just stall some time, set up a bunch of Flygons, and just essentially put 60 damage on your opponent's field in between turns. And it seems really bad, but once you can move that damage around, all you need is like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 turns of damage, and you can just win the game. But taking all 6 prizes at once. Being that you don't have to knock them out if you have Dusknoir in play, it also allows you to most efficiently use the damage so that you don't take prizes, so that you're like, you don't get end Iono effect kind of down to a low hand size. So really good. And this is kind of where Flygon falls off. We did see some play out of these Flygons. I have seen these in decks before. I have used Sandflap Flygon before, which is you essentially just shuffle your opponent to draw 4 cards in a control deck. I played this in Orbeetle Hatterene. So essentially what that deck did is Orbeetle put a bunch of stage 2s in play, and Hatterene forced your opponent to discard a card from your hand. So you'd shuffle your opponent to 4 cards, and then Hatterene had an ability where it discarded a card from each player's hand. But we have a card that just reuses called Execute. So Execute, we'll just bring up the Hatterene while we're here. So the Hatterene, discard a card from each player's hand. That's what the essential combo we're going for, and we play Execute, Execute from Plasma Freeze, which, as often as you like, you can pick it up from your pile into your hand. So essentially, we don't discard anything, but we're going to force our opponent to get rid of their whole hand. And it's like, you know, this is, you're kind of thinking, why is this good? You can just discard your opponent's hand anyway. But what you do is you'd put your opponent to a 4-card hand previously with the with just milling with Hatterene, and then you'd speed up the process of your win con by just forcing them to 4 new cards every turn with Flygon. And this was just really good because sometimes your opponent has an out for your strategy that they're just trying to, you know, wait to come into their hand, and we don't really want to sit there and give them time to draw it. We're just going to force them into 4 cards every turn and get rid of those 4 cards. And 4 random cards they don't get to choose. And then there's also the Orbeetle from Sword and Shield, which helped with this, which would rearrange the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. So again, speeding up that strategy helps, so you don't ever give your opponent a card that you don't ever have to be forced into an uncomfortable spot of 3 good cards on the top of your opponent's deck. So that was very, very cool. I do know that this Flygon saw play in a deck called Primal Flygon, because the Vibrava was immune to effects of supporter cards, so you'd put it on your bench and they can't be bosses ordered, and then you would evolve into Flygon and do a bunch of damage, but I don't think it was ever very good. Maybe the pandemic would have given it a shot, but with VMAXs around and tag teams around, why would you do 240 damage for 3 fightings when you can just do Pikarom like 290 and 170 on the bench? Then we move on to a couple other fun Flygons. This one can stop your opponent from trading, but it wasn't actually good. And this one did see a little bit of play, but it's not good. It saw play in the Brilliant Stars format with Arceus decks. There was like 1 or 2 that played it because you could just accelerate 3 energy to it and then just blow up whatever VMAX is unfortunate enough to eat this Draconic Impulse. Silence VMAX, eat my Draconic Impulse, be gone from my sight. But it actually doesn't want to go every VMAX. It only does 320. I know it says only 320, but some of the VMAX is 330, 340. You don't want to leave that with 1 HP. So it didn't even like do the job, and it required awkward energy. It wasn't really the best ever. So Flygon, definite fall off. Starting from like some of the best cards ever, like this card, really good. Flyvies, really, really good. 09 Flygon, one of the best decks of all time. And then we move on to just mid from X and Y onward. So this is definitely the biggest case of Flygon, you know, favorite falling off kind of thing, forgotten favorites. On a similar note of other Stage 2 Hoenn Pokemon, we have Metagross. Definitely a guy that used to get a ton of good cards, but eventually fell off. This Metagross, not super recognized as a good card, but it did see play in the Metabest decks, which uses Gorbis, basically the best attacker in 2004 besides Blaziken. Just because you could move energy around your field, which was really good because the deck would play, you know, double rainbow to move around. And it's just a really cool artwork as well, so respect on this Metagross' name. We'd also see this Metagross see play. I think it's been tried in 04, but Fire, Fighting, Weakness are 2 of the worst weaknesses to have, considering Blaziken and Magma. Also, Metacham is around, so careful for that. But I think it's all played in 2005, I believe top 16 in like the World's Last Chance Qualifier or something like that. I believe this Metagross did see some play. Essentially, Metallic Reversal is pretty good. You get to choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to switch the active before doing damage. So it's kind of like a Lysander Boss's Orders effect with your attack. So you get to choose a guy, bring it up. 40 damage isn't a ton, but it's something. And we see this awful trend starting here of extra Comet Punch attacks, where it's essentially Meteor Mash as its modern translation. But you do a base damage, and then if he stays active, you do an extra 50 damage. Just really bad because if your opponent switches you at all with like a Boss's Orders or like a Escape Rope Warp Point effect, then your damage gets reset. So you have to stay active. A little bit more likely back then than it is now with Boss Orders as like a 3 to 4 of in every deck, but still. Then we see some real winners. Skip this promo, ignore that. We saw Super Conductivity Metagross, same ability as my Magnezone friend we talked about earlier, except for Psychic and Metal Pokemon. Accelerate one of these two energies to the active Pokemon, then accelerate, they take damage. And this one mainly saw play because of the other Metagross we're going to talk about, but it also, I think, saw some play with, just in general, was just decent, because accelerating energy is good, especially from discard pile, if you can get there. The real winner of the Metagross Gen 3s is the Meta Knight Metagross, which is played in the Meta Knight deck, Metagross Dragonite. Dragonite was essentially like Flaffy from Evolving Skies, where you accelerate lightning energy to the bench, and this Metagross was really kind of an all-in-one card. Delta Control is an insane consistency booster. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck, choose one and put them into your hand, put the other 3 on the bottom of your deck in any order. So it's like a better Dracloak, right? Instead of looking at only 2 cards, you get to look at 4, and you can do this multiple times, which is just crazy. Essentially, they're just going to get whatever they want every turn if they have multiple Metagross out. And then Crush and Burn is a really low modifier, but 30 plus 20 for each energy card you discard. Essentially, you can just reuse all the energy if it's lightning, so just go ahead and discard a bunch of energy, do a bunch of damage. Like I said, the modifier is really low on the attack, honestly. You need like 4 just to go ahead and KO another Metagross, for instance, but it gets there. You can definitely benefit from being able to KO like big Pokemon that other decks would have to like 3-shot. So in a pinch, you can do like a 150 damage or something like that to KO an EX. Then we saw the Metagross EX, which has recently picked up in RSPK. There's been some Swampert EX decks picking up, and Swampert accelerates 3 energy from the discard pile, but ends your turn. So like people have been kind of exploring what's the best way to play it. It's kind of like either Aggron or Metagross EX, these big metal type Pokemon that can take advantage of metal energy, which reduces damage done by 10. Because if you accelerate 3 of those metal energy here, it's pretty hard to knock out this big dog. And Metallic Reversal, its power is essentially Judge, so putting your opponent to 4 cards is like not bad at all. Especially, like, I know EX format has a ton of consistency with Holland Transceiver. It's basically impossible to Rocket's admin your opponent and actually break them unless you're also, discarding cards from their hand. But if you just force your opponent to 4 cards every turn, it's going to make things a little bit better than just, admin to like 1 where they just draw Transceiver and Transceiver for Scientist draw 10. But like this can actually like stick your opponent because you're just going to do it every turn. And you can even do it multiple times, it looks like. But it has to be your active, so you'd have to use a Warp Energy to use it multiple times. But still, just putting your opponent to 4 cards every turn, they're going to have to be put in more uncomfortable spots. Obviously it's good because of Judge. We know putting your opponent to 4 is good. Scan Blast is a 70, and 70 to each your opponent's bench Pokemon with the same name. Really unique attack. So if your opponent, let's just say, has 3 Stantlers in play, like a lot of Rayquaza decks tend to do, you can just Scan Blast, KO all 3 of them. So interesting attack there that has some meta viability. Haha, meta. Moving on to the Diamond and Pearl era, we do see a big fall off in terms of playability, honestly, but I do love this Metagross from Legends Awakened. I've played it with my Flygon Metagross deck, which was a 2010 concept, but is apparently now a 2009 deck too. 2009 players saw me cooking, and they realized that this card's kind of goated if you can flip heads. Flip a coin if heads, switch your one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with the defending Pokemon. If heads, it's Boss's Orders, which is really bad on nowadays cards, but with 2009 you get a lot of turns. 2010 you also get a lot of turns, though less so, which sometimes has been leading to my downfall because I'm very bad at flipping coins. I have like in my life I probably have a 10 to 90 coin flip ratio. It's also got one of these really bad extra Comet Punch attacks, but with this Gust power you can actually sometimes stick it, because you can Gust up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon like a liability like Claydol and smack it for 50, and then threaten to be like, well, I'm going to hit you for 100 next turn, and I'm going to Gust up whatever I want. because the Claydol won't be able to respond to you. They'll have to like retreat it if they want to do anything. But you're threatening to hit 100 on anything. Or you just flip tails like I do on 2 flips, and then you're really sad. But it is a pretty decent card, honestly, in retrospect. Should have been played more with Flygon. Not as good as Flyterra, but still like a solid tier 2 deck in 2010. I haven't tried it in 2009, but I've heard it's also really good in Stalgon decks. Similar reason. There's also this Metagross, which lowers all HP by 20. I use it in my quad Metagross deck, but that deck is no way good. This card's probably the worst card in the deck, honestly. It just looks really cool and has a really cool Pokebody. So I don't think these guys were very good. We did have the Plasma Search Metagross, which was unfortunately never good because it's a Stage 2 Plasma Pokemon. Allows you to search your deck for a Team Plasma card, which is seemingly really good. You know, you can grab a Colress Machine, a Colress as your supporter. You can grab a Plasma Triad, I forget what they're called, Shadow Triad, and just get any card from the discard pile. You can grab your Plasma Pokemon to set up, but the main thing that's the problem is that Plasma decks were pretty much always basics, unless they were playing the Aromatisse later on Stage 1. I don't think I've ever seen a Plasma deck run a Stage 2, and for good reason, because they just like going burr. Then we see a big fall off with XY. Pretty much none of these were good. I did try to make the double Metagross work, and I played one of these in the deck because it was also kind of decent in this style of deck. Essentially, what I tried to get this to do is you can have 2 tool cards attached. So I'd put 2 Hard Charms, which reduces damage done by 40, and then I would try to stack as many Special Metals, which did, at the time there was Shield Metal, which did the same thing as Special Metal, reduce damage done to Metal guys by 10. So I'd essentially have like 230 HP, but obviously you'd have more than that technically in resistance, and then I would use Machine Gun Stomp, just try to do some solid damage. If you could build up, Guard Press was also start reducing damage even further. It's also a really cool artwork because it's on Steven Stone's throne from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, so shout out to people who play that game. You'll recognize his like octagonal room that you battle him in, so really cool card, but just not good. Metagross' last really good card, because like honestly I know some of these like see little bits of play, but its last really good card was Metagross GX. This card was super duper on its release. I think it took second at Madison Regionals 2017 with Christopher Szymanski piloting it, and also someone else I believe in the top 16 piloted it. Essentially, Geotech system is very similar to Super Connectivity. You accelerate a Psychic or Metal from your discard pile to your active, but no damage is done, and Giga Hammer does 150. Now, this is pretty low damage, honestly, for 3 energies on a Stage 2. A lot of times 3 energies on a Stage 2, you think Solgaleo GX does 230. So what's the deal? But what this deck aimed to do is you just outlast your opponent. You choice ban the Metagross to make it do 180 with Giga Hammer, which was actually hitting relevant numbers then on like the big basics like Drampa and Tapu Lele. And Volcanion, though that matchup is unwinnable. And then you retreat Metagross for 3 energy, come up with your other Metagross, max potion this guy that had been damaged, now the energy's gone, and accelerate the energy back up to your new Metagross. And you just chain these Giga Hammer attacks that can't be used consecutively by just retreating and accelerating 2 to 3 energy onto your next Metagross. The GX deck, Algorithm GX, search your deck for 5 cards. Theoretically very good, but your opponent would never let you actually keep it. If they see you search 5 cards, they're going to be like, alright, put them back in the deck with a hand disrupting card. So this was really our last good Metagross card. We did see this Metagross VMAX kind of take off for like online tourneys for a second with the Mew VMAX format in Fusion Strike. There was quad decks, and this was just one of the better quad decks. It's got a similar attack to like all the extra comet punches where you have to do it consecutively to get anything, but this one was actually kind of okay because you only played, these decks were called quad decks, so they only played like 8 Pokemon. You play 4 V and 4 VMAX and just a bunch of healing cards and try to outlast your opponent with a big VMAX, or 2 rather. And recently we've seen this Metagross get a little bit of success, but it's only because of Metang. It's just there is like a last ditch, if my opponent drops my Metang active, I can at least attack with it. It still keeps on getting the bad Meteor Mash, extra Comet Punch style attacks, so please stop giving it these attacks. Please stop giving it Meteor Mash and extra Comet Punch, and even max extra Comet Punch. That's the first step to making Metagross good again. Please stop giving it those attacks. Back with another big dude that does a lot of damage. We have Stage 2 Machamp. A lot of these are going to be Stage 2s, honestly, because a lot of Stage 2s just weren't viable during Sword and Shield, so if they haven't gotten a card that was good during Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, a lot of times it's just because they're a Stage 2, I guess. and they'd have to get a good Scarlet Violet card to actually be good. But in general, we just see design going away from these guys, so that's why we're covering them. Machamp's, I think, first playable card was this Giovanni's Machamp. You flip 4 coins and does 30 for each head. It's really bad. However, its body is hilarious because you have to get, in order for your opponent to knock you out, you get to flip a coin. If heads, you're not knocked out. And you can combine this with Focus Band, which does the exact same thing on a tool card. So essentially, your opponent would have to flip. You'd have to flip 2 heads or 2 tails, sorry, for your opponent to knock you out. So it's a really funny, obnoxious deck from what I've heard. Again, I'm not a super expert on these, but I did see this Machamp seeing some play in 2004 because terraforming allows you to boost your consistency a little, rearrange the top 4 cards of your deck. Not bad. But mainly in 2004, it was, I believe, this Machamp right here from Hidden Legends, which just does a decent amount of damage. If your opponent has any EX in play, they do 30 more damage with the attacks. It just had some 2 attacks that just hit pretty hard. We had Boost Energy around this time, which I think it used. I think that's top 32 Worlds and Seniors is the result it got. Then we have this Machamp here, which actually recently took off in RSPK, kind of a meme deck for a while. Every deck in RSPK is a meme deck until someone takes second place at a tourney with it, I guess. And this uses that Electrode that I talked about earlier that explodes itself and accelerates a bunch of energy. And you have 2 good attacks here. Derail, discards a special energy if any attached to the defending Pokemon, which is actually solid because you can attack and be disruptive to your opponent. There's a lot of special energy in RSPK. Think decks like Dragtrode, which is just their entire deck special energy, right? So you can get disruptive early on if you don't have your energy discard pile yet, and then Swift Blow is the main attack. Because why discard special energy from your opponent's active with that attack when you could just delete them and discard all special energy attached when you knock them out? 60 plus 20 for each react energy attached to Machamp. So obviously, Electrode puts his energy on Machamp. So if you put 4, now you're doing 140, and you can have other special energy on there. I believe Hold on Energy FF would remove your effects of attacks, so you can just go through anything, which is pretty strong. Yeah, pretty good. Then we saw Machamp moving on. Even if this card wasn't good at the time, by the way, I want to stress by the video, it's just that cards are being designed that can be good, right? Not every card is going to be discovered at its time. Same thing with Metagross with the 2009 deck. Then we have this Machamp, which saw play in 2007 Worlds, because it was just kind of a big numbers card. This isn't really like a super good card in retrospect. Revenge does 70 for 1 energy if any of your guys were knocked out, and Dynamic Punch does a bunch of damage, but you have to kind of understand with 2007 Worlds, there's only 1 Diamond and Pearl set, so all of the power creep set in by Diamond and Pearl's Stage 2s, which were just like big record breakers with 130 and 140 HP, you could just have like a stats deck. Like, my deck is just really big. All these guys in here are really big, and they're going to hit you really hard. And if your complex EX deck can't deal with that, that's a you problem kind of thing. So a lot of stats cards saw play at 2007 Worlds because there was only 1 new set of the new block, which was huge power creep. Same thing we saw with like 2011, where it's even bigger power creep there. 130 HP on a basic with Retro. My God, that's like plus 30 HP of the next biggest basic, and does 120 damage. So same thing kind of with Reshiram in 2011. Yeah, even here, power creep. This to Terrakion, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because Terrakion had a revenge attack that did 90 for 2 energy on a basic. So crazy. Then we saw really the best Machamp card, honestly, was Takeout Machamp. 130 HP, still really big, but mainly what matters is Takeout. If the defending Pokemon isn't an evolved Pokemon, they're knocked out. So like, hey, your opponent's basic Dialga has 4 special medals on it. Expert Belt, so it's like, what, 180 HP? Snow Point Stadium for good effect, 200 HP effectively. Takeout, it's dead. Obviously, there was Unknown G at the time, which did prevent all effects of attack, so if you hit into an Unknown G, your attack just does nothing, because the 40 damage gets turned into an effect, which gets turned into nothing because of Unknown G, which blocks all effects. But Takeout was really big, especially when the SPs came out, because you can just 1-hit KO any of them and for a single energy, which is crazy, that they preemptively printed a counter. Imagine them nowadays printing a counter to a strategy beforehand that's just like an auto counter. But SPs were still good, and so was Machamp. It was a very balanced time to play the game. Sometimes you would just lose the game, I suppose, to a turn 1 Machamp. It's happened to me before, where my opponent just gets like a turn 1, like 2 Kingdras in play, and a Machamp's taking me out, and it's miserable. But otherwise, it's pretty balanced. It's got a bad weakness, which helps balance it out. Hurricane Punch, flip 4 coins, 30 for each heads. So if you can't take out your opponent, you can at least get some Hurricane Punch and damage in there. And I would say this third attack's useless, but it recently KO'd me when I was playing Garbodor against a Gliscor deck against my friend Richard. I hit him with a Psychic Lock for 90, and then he hit me back with Rage for 150, which was pretty scary. So every once in a while, you can get some damage in there with Rage, I suppose. This was buffed by its level X, which just occasionally, like if your takeout failed, the level X could give you an option. Strong Willed is really bad attack, but I'll mention it. During your opponent's next turn, Machamp would be knocked out, flip a coin to Feds, it's not, and becomes 10 instead, but only does 20 damage. That seems really bad, right? But No Guard boosts damage to and from Machamp by 60. So essentially he just becomes a glass cannon. He does 60 more damage, but he takes 60 more damage from attacks. But mainly what this is for is if you can't use your takeout, you want to use Hurricane Punch and buff it by 60. And just, my Machamp can't take out your basic, or so you thought, because now I have 60 more damage and I'm going to threaten like Hurricane Punch for 120. So, really good. Then we saw another playable Machamp come off these guys, whatever, with Machamp Prime in Triumphant, which if Machamp's on your bench, you can move all fighting energy to it and then switch Machamp with your active. So you, in the Majestic Dawn to Call of Legends format, with both take out Machamp and this Machamp are legal, you start the game with the other Machamp. There's no unknown G in that format, by the way, so Machamp just kind of KOs anything. And then when your opponent like builds up their guys that you can't knock out anymore with take out Machamp, you switch in this guy. You like tag him in like a wrestling match, like, you know, high five, get in there, buddy, and start using like these insane like high damage tags with 150 HP. So a really neat deck. Champ Buster is also just a crazy attack name. Going into Gen 5 then, we only have 2 Machamps for the whole block, and they're both terrible. Going into Gen 6, we get this Machamp, which is like okay, but not really that good because it's a Stage 2. And one set after this release, Night March would release, so have fun playing your Stage 2 when there's Seismitoad and Night March around. Then we got this Machamp, which is actually kind of okay. Did 20 damage times the number of damage counters on him, so you'd be able to just KO anything with this attack, but better is Crazy Hammer, which did 80 plus 80 if it was affected by a special condition, and then remove that. And there was an Ariados at this time that you could play that would affect it by a special condition, and then you do 160, and your opponent would be poisoned too. So you'd technically do 170, so kind of one KOing 2 prizers, but then you'd remove the poison, so you wouldn't really be affected by that. And, you know, if your opponent hits you, then you get Steaming Mad for a ton of damage. Never really meta, just a fun little rogue deck. And then going into Sun and Moon, we get some of the worst Machamps ever. Evolutions is also bad. But, like, Machamp GX is, like, I think PTC Gireo rated as, like, his worst GX. And you can kind of see why. Huge energy costs. 180 for 3 fightings is your 1 per game attack. Really? Like, most GX attacks were doing, like, 240, you know, guaranteed one-shot, or getting off, like, a really good support attack. Not doing 180 for 3. Just really bad attacks on this guy that cost way too many energy. We did Machamp Break, which was also bad. And then the last playable Machamp, really, I don't think Machamp VMAX ever saw play. And then the GLC fans could have this one, but that doesn't count. The last playable Machamp was Machamp Marshadow, which I think won top 128 Worlds in Whimsicott. Porygon Z. Essentially, this is just a Pikarom counter. You slot this in your deck with Porygon Z because you accelerate Rainbow Energy, and Revenge does 120, which KOs Pikarom. Or if you get the jump on your opponent somehow with turn 2, turn 2 Porygon, you can just start swinging for 160 times 2 with Lightning Weakness. Just kind of a neat card. Love the artwork on this guy, but never actually good, just mainly good because it killed Pikarom and that's it. So, yeah, Machamp definitely fallen off since then. Didn't really see this guy see into play into Sword and Shield at all. Even though Pikarom was everywhere, this guy was not. Kind of tells you that it was just mainly there as like a one-time check to hope you can just win the game because your opponent wasn't expecting it. That's why Whimsicott is a tier 5 deck in 2019, not like a meta deck, sadly. The last Pokemon I'll be talking about today is Steelix. Remember, if you want me to do any other Pokemon, comment in the comment section below. There's others like Pichu, Empoleon, Blastoise, Vileplume, Electrode, Gallade, Kingdra that made short lists. But didn't actually make the main list. So maybe we could do another one and lower the requirements a bit to talk about some other guys if you guys like this. Comment down below if you do. Starting off with Steelix, really good card from Neo. I haven't played any Neo, but I've seen this card in like every Neo format. It's just giant HP. 110 HP back then, crazy. And the metal typing, which this is one of the first metal Pokemon. In fact, like the first set of metal Pokemon had the Steelix. And metal energy reduces damage by 10, which is absolutely nuts because you're already one of the bulkiest Pokemon of all time, and now you have metal energy. So, just crazy. And its attacks didn't do much damage, but didn't matter because it's going to take your opponent like 9 shots to take out your Steelix. So, might as well get comfy and just start swinging the tackle. And at the time, I know there's a Brock's Steelix deck, which is what it was called, where you would play Brock's Ninetales, and Brock's Ninetales had the ability Shapeshift, which is let it turn into another Stage 1. Essentially, you just put it on top of it and become that Stage 1. But one of the interesting things about it was that the reason you'd use Brock's Ninetales, why would I just put this Stage 1 in place so I can get another Stage 1, is because of Brock's Protection, which was an energy protection card that prevents your opponent from removing energies from you. So you build up the steel energies now, and your opponent can't use energy removal or super energy removal, which essentially energy removal, let me just search it up to give you some context on how good it was. Energy removal, discard an energy card from one of your opponent's Pokemon. Super energy removal, choose one energy attached to your own Pokemon, discard it, discard 2 from one of your opponent's Pokemon. You can't keep energy on board at all until these cards rotated. So Steelix made it nice because now you could. With the Brock's Protection, which we'll just look up real quick. Brock always brings protection. Shout out to him, a real ladies man. Brings his protection to the field, prevents energy from being removed from your Brock's Pokemon, because Ninetales was a Brock's Pokemon. So, pretty cool. Anyway, moving on from Steelix. I don't know about these other prints because I'm not an expert on this era, but I do know that Dark Steelix saw play in 2005. I believe it was really good at US Nats. Or Worlds, one of the two, because it was a counterplay for a lot of decks at the time. Essentially, this is a really cool card because it's both Dark and Metal type. I think this is one of the coolest cards ever for Steelix because it gets to take advantage of the unique benefits of both Dark and Metal energy. Metal energy reduces damage done by 10. Dark energy boosts damage done by 10. So, Energy Link searches the discard pile for an energy card and attaches it to Dark Steelix. And Heavy Impact is 60, just a solid damaging attack. Seems kind of weak, but then those Dark energy, like I said, they stack 10. So you can stack the Metal energy to reduce damage, or you can start stacking Dark energy to boost your damage. So just a real all-in-one card, which I think is a really neat effect that saw play around 2005. Going into 2006, LBS was one of the best decks in the format, and the S in LBS stands for Steelix. Essentially, Lugia was like a big swinger, Blastoise with your energy acceleration, and Steelix is another big swinger. And he was really good because of Mudslide. Yeah, that is Mudslide, buddy! Do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, discard 2 fighting energy. How do you power this up, though? Obviously, Blastoise EX. I just mentioned Blastoise. Let's go down to that real quick just to give you some reference. Blastoise accelerates as many water as you like from your hand to one of your Pokemon, but damages them by 10. Okay, but we need fighting energy. How do we do that? Holon's Cast Form. Which, Holon's Cast Form, we've talked about before, is 2 of any rainbow energy, but you need to bounce an energy to play it. So you need to have an energy already on there that you can put back to your hand. But that's fine because then you can put it back to your hand and re-accelerate with Blastoise. So essentially in one turn you can just power up, my god, Holland's Cast Form, I didn't know you had game like that. But essentially you can attach as many energies you like, and Holland's Cast Form is just your attachment for turn, for 2 rainbow. So going back to the Steelix, why was hitting 100 really good? Obviously 100 snipe is pretty strong. Think about the HP at this time. All the EXs have like 150, but the regular Pokemon don't. Why was that so strong? Because of Pidgeot. Same thing as Pidgeot EX nowadays. I believe it's RG. Yes, here we go. So, same thing as Pidgeot nowadays. Quick search, search your deck for any card. Same card, 100 HP. Wow, what a coincidence. Steelix, annihilate him. Kill him now. Get rid of that bird from my sight. Thank you, Steelix. That's why he was in the LBS deck. Because this thing eats birds. Cannon. Moving on to Gen 4, we get a couple, or just one really bad print here with Diamond and Pearl print. I don't think that's on any play. But I was interested to know that this is actually a decent Steelix here. I had a friend who built the deck for the Stormfront format, so Diamond and Pearl to Stormfront. And Outbreak power is pretty good. So you choose the number of your opponent's Pokemon equal to the number of energy attached to Steelix. Does 20 for each of them. This paired apparently with Magnezone is what my friend was running, so Magnezone obviously gets extra energy in play and then can move it around. So you can move all the energy onto Steelix and just do an obnoxious amount of damage to 20 to each of your opponent's Pokemon. And then clean up with Magnezone, or just spread a bunch of times and then eventually win because you're accelerating metal energies. This is going to be pretty bulky. Hard to take out. Then in 2010, we get the infamous Rogue deck, Steelix Prime. Similar thing to Dark Steelix, where it accelerates energy from the discard pile to itself, but you can only use metal this time. But that's fine because we have one of the best Pokebodies of the entire format. That means it can't be affected by special conditions. The big thing that really hinders tank decks in 2010 is special conditions, but Steelix doesn't care. And then Gaia Crush is an attack you build up to 100, discarding Stadium in play. It's actually really good against decks that rely on Stadiums. Not every deck does rely on Stadiums, but just being able to run no Stadiums in your own deck and then just counter your opponents with the attack is really good. I'm sure Lugia V-Star players know that getting to counter Stadiums while not playing your own is unfair and unbalanced. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Moving on to Gen 5, we got one Steelix and it was awful. And Gen 6, we got awful Steelix as well. So you kind of see the favor dropping here. But in Gen 7, we got a really unexpected Steelix, which I think is really fun. The Steelix from Lost Thunder had 2 archetypes in the Lost Thunder format. Or from Celestial Storm, sorry. 2 archetypes in the Lost Thunder format. There was Steelix Sol, which was a deck that tried to stall your opponent out with its big HP and let the Stadium Shrine of Punishment, which was a stadium that damaged your opponent in between turns. So Shrine of Punishment damages GX and EX in between turns. So essentially you just stall out with your Steelix. It's not the best stall deck ever, but it's kind of funny. You just stall them with the big Steelix and just whittle them down. There's also the attacking Steelix deck, which is just like, okay, my Steelix has 190 HP. I'm going to equip it with a thing that gives it more residual, or that makes it take less damage from attacks. The Metal Frying Pan also took away its weakness, so now you have 220 HP. Effectively. And I'm just going to swing for these mediocre attacks and just outlast you. So, kind of a surprise card. Really, after that, though, I mean, we did see the Steelix see play with Dodrio at like the 1 regional, but none of these Steelix cards have been good since then. Kind of a shame. This one's kind of neat, but bad time to come out. There's a lot of neat Steelix cards, honestly, but they just take too many energies. Like 5 energy for 200, bro. What are you cooking? Get out of here. Anyway, thanks for coming to this video. Want to try something a little bit different, a little TCG discussion video on TCG's Forgotten Favorites. Again, this is kind of a short list of only 5, but I have other ones like Gallade, Kingdra, Pichu, Blastoise, and Polion that I could go into if you want a future video like this. So thank you all so much for watching. See you in the next one.